Mr. Ambassador, thanks for your time.
Delighted to be here.
How do you find Afghanistan? Because you're already familiar with Afghanistan, but as ambassador, this is the first time that you're working in Afghanistan.
Well, first, it is a very busy place. My days are long, but I find them productive and challenging. I think a lot of people tend to focus on the negative, particularly if they're living in a situation, and certainly Afghanistan faces its share of challenges and problems. But as I move around the city and think back to what Kabul looked like in January 2002 when I opened the embassy, it is a different world. The traffic jams, the commercial activity, the development of institutions. I've been calling on ministers who, are engaged in their work. A lot of problems out there that we're going to have to face jointly, but there has been a tremendous amount of progress in 9.5 years.
Mr. Ambassador, your predecessor, Caroline Kernberry, did not enjoy a good relation with President Karzai. And in some level, they had a tough discussion with each other. So, how do you see your role to establish a type of working relation with President Karzai?
Well, first, President Karzai is the president of Afghanistan, and we respect that, and we deal with him in that capacity. But I would add personally that I arrived here in Kabul maybe 10 days after President Karzai arrived from Bonn, where he'd been named chairman of the Interim Authority of Afghanistan. And I got to know him at that time. I've stayed in touch with him periodically over the years, and I have a great respect for his courage, his commitment, his determination to build a strong and stable Afghanistan. I think he's a genuine Afghan nationalist, and I admire him.
Most people, Mr. Ambassador, consider him in these recent days as a critic of the international community, especially the United States. How do you manage with him to work together?
Well, again, the relationship that I hope to enjoy with the president has to be between me and the president. But we face the same challenges here. We confront the same enemy. We seek the same goals. And we both have paid a very high price. I was just last night at a ceremony to honor the soldiers from both Afghanistan and the United States who were killed up in Wardak, jointly fighting a common enemy. So we will have differences from time to time in how we see things or how we think things should be approached. But I've followed affairs here in Afghanistan since I was president in 2002 on the large strategic issues. There's no daylight between us.
Mr. Ambassador, soon we will have the Bonn conference about Afghanistan. What is the United States expectation from the Bonn conference?
Well, we have two conferences coming up, and I think they're both important. First, the Istanbul conference in early November, which will be a regional conference. What your government and ours are hoping to see come out of that is a commitment by all of Afghanistan's neighbors to work for its security and its stability as an anchor for a secure and stable region. We would then expect to see the Bonn Conference endorse such a document. This will be a huge conference. The Germans are doing a marvelous job in organizing it. Up to 90 foreign ministers are expected. So I think, again, it's an opportunity to make clear that Afghanistan enjoys the support of the entire international community. And that is a message of, I think, reassurance to the Afghan people and a clear warning to those who would seek to undermine security and stability. I expect there will also be an economic dimension to the conference, but this is still in the planning stages. I think we'll have a clearer view after Istanbul.
Yeah. Mr. Ambassador, how much impact will have the Istanbul conference over the Bonn conference?
Well, again, if it proceeds as I've described, I think it will be a very useful prelude to the Bonn conference in producing a document, a pledge from Afghanistan's neighbors that then becomes an international pledge to support security and stability. I think there's something else that will be important that should begin in Istanbul and carry forward in Bonn. I mentioned an economic dimension. I expect both conferences to have a focus on regional economic cooperation and how Afghanistan can serve as a hub for the region in economic development. We use the term the new Silk Road. So we would expect, again, both Istanbul and Bonn to pay attention to economic development, both in Afghanistan specifically, but also region-wide.
Yeah. There are some rumors that the Taliban will also invite it to the Istanbul conference. So is it true, Mr. Ambassador, or is this the case or not?
Well, the Germans are hosting a conference, but the government of Afghanistan is running it.
But what point was the Istanbul conference?
Oh, the Istanbul conference? I'm not aware of what the arrangements are for the Istanbul conference. I would imagine they would be very similar to the Bonn conference.
Yeah, but what would be happening in a Bonn conference? Is there any chance to invite a delegation from the Taliban or not?
Well, I think it's been very clear that there is going to be one Afghan delegation, and it's going to be led by the government of Afghanistan. The foreign minister has spoken to this issue. He does not exclude that members of the Taliban could be part of that delegation, depending on how they have done with the Higher Peace Council, but a single delegation.
But do you see any chance to see the Taliban as a part of the Afghan delegation?
Well, again, Foreign Minister Rasul has spoken to that. He does not exclude that.
But still, it's not that much clear.
Yeah, it depends on. It's going to depend on the Taliban and whether they take the steps towards reconciliation that would cause the government to invite them to be part of the delegation, and that's obviously up to the government to decide.
Yes. As Mr. Ambassador, you mentioned during your press conference that as far as the participation of the Taliban, they will not participate in a Bonn conference
as a separate delegation. There's, there is going to be only one Afghan delegation. It will be led by the Afghan government. Its participants will be chosen by the Afghan government. There isn't going to be another Afghan Taliban delegation. There's going to be just the one delegation.
Yeah, but if I quote you, Mr. Ambassador, you also mentioned that I don't expect to see the Taliban there. So it means that
as a separate delegation.
Yeah, but if they are part of the Afghan delegation, so
that's entirely up to the Afghan government.
Yeah. I also want to, Mr. Ambassador, raise the issue of the transition. Everybody in Afghanistan now talking about the transition, but there is a deep sense of worry and conscious about among the Afghan people. Most Afghans think that the United States will again leave Afghanistan, and then Afghanistan will face civil war. So, what are you thinking about this?
Well, I'm here at a critical period for Afghanistan, for the United States, for the region. We are in a period of transition. I think that's natural. It's 9.5 years since the overthrow of the Taliban. Afghan institutions have developed considerably, including its security forces. We have already accomplished transition in 7 districts. So we'll proceed in a careful, measured, responsible manner between now and the end of 2014. I lived the history of 1989, 1990. I wasn't here, but I remember it very, very clearly. And we are determined that we will not repeat the mistake we made then of disengaging from the region, disengaging from Afghanistan. We all know what happened then. A horrific civil war that eventually brought the Taliban to power. The Afghan people paid a terrible price during that decade, and a decade later we paid a terrible price at 9/11. So we're determined, the Afghan government and the American government, that we are going to get this transition right. And right means, at the end of the day, a secure, stable Afghanistan that can protect its own people, protect its borders, and ensure their economic well-being.
Mr. Ambassador, how do you see the role of Pakistan in a transition?
I think Pakistan has clearly an important role to play. They're your neighbor. They're always going to be your neighbor. They can be important in economic relations. I was very pleased to see the conclusion of the Afghanistan-Pakistan Trade and Transit Agreement. And I think as we look at another important element of transition, which is reconciliation, obviously the Pakistanis have an important role to play there. I hope they do so in a definitive and a positive way. Some of the mechanisms that have been created, such as the core group, I attended the core group's meetings last week in Islamabad, U.S., Afghanistan, Pakistan, the bilateral commission between Afghanistan and Pakistan. These are all encouraging developments.
Mr. Ambassador, President Karzai always criticized Pakistan, and most Afghans think that the Pakistan government and some element under the ISI and Pakistani army are providing support to the Taliban groups. So how do you see this? How can you work with Pakistan to end their help and support to the Taliban?
Well, I think you phrased that very well. We have been, we will continue to work with the Pakistani government to ensure that, to everything we can, to see that the Taliban is brought under control in Pakistan and prevented from creating problems in Afghanistan. But it's important to bear in mind that here again, there is a common enemy. The rise of the Taliban Pakistan, a Pakistani Taliban that is attacking the Pakistani government, is something new and reminds us that, again, we face common threats and common enemies. I was ambassador to Pakistan from 2004 to 2007. I watched some of the things the Pakistani government attempted to do. Over the last number of years, they have lost more than 3,000 soldiers fighting the same militants that we're fighting. Can they do more? Yes. And we will continue to discuss with them how.
Mr. Ambassador, do you see any positive changes or positive steps from the Pakistani government according to curb the terrorism or cut support for the Taliban?
I think they have clearly engaged elements of the Taliban. Again, there is a fight going on up in the tribal areas that involves the Pakistani military and militants, many of whom are Taliban. Are they doing everything that's possible? No. Clearly they are not, because other elements of the Taliban are able to live with relative normalcy. Now, it's a complicated situation, and I think that's understood here. Pakistan faces enormous security challenges, and it has to choose which fights it can engage at which time. We, like Afghanistan, want to see them to do more against the Taliban, particularly the leadership, and we're going to keep pushing that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, for your time.
Thank you for yours.
Thank you.